Good morning, everyone. Let's see. Don't see anybody here. Anyone there? Good morning. I think I'm live. I always do this, right? The Am I Live stuff. I usually see a bunch of people logged on when I start. That makes me a bit worried. If you're there, can you give me a ping? Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks, Marie. Okay, so I know I'm on. That's a very good sign. Welcome, Joelle. Okay, there we go. Things are starting to look normal. I started to get into a bit of a panic for a second there. And I have so many things that I want to talk about today and brainstorm together on. Hey, Chrissy, good to see you. Good morning. Yeah, I thought of a bunch of things that we could talk about. And I had a good morning, Cynthia. I had another great night in bed looking at books and doing like rabbit hole stuff, finding something out that leads to something else, that leads to something else. It's so interesting. So I want to share some new finds with you. But the first thing I want to show you, I don't think I've showed you this yet. I know I've shown this travesty. Hey, Chris, good morning. I know I showed this the other day, my first rug, right, with all the tails, like horrible. But I love this. I love this. Hey, Glenn Gear from Montreal. Hey, thanks for coming on. I'm not going to dwell on this too much because it's my very first one. And obviously I didn't even read the directions when I was hooking it. But good morning, Linda. This season is just really lightening things up, weather-wise, comfort-wise. And of course, leaves are turning into a big motif this season with fall coming. I'm trying to steer a little bit away from Halloween, which is it's all consuming for me with little kids. Good morning, Lily. I'm glad you can pop. I'm sending your thing out today. Good morning, Linda. Oh, good. Everybody's here. That makes me feel better. It's still like talking to a wall when I'm sitting here by myself talking. It's so strange. I keep thinking about just in general, I keep thinking about this thing that one of the ministers said in church years ago when I used to be around Hartford. This whole sermon was about the bridge that people live on. If you are a bridge person, you're going to recognize the sentiment. But the whole thing was kind of about like how people have a tendency to live in between other things. Like, for example, it's Monday and you're working and you can't wait for it to be Friday, or it's June and you go on vacation in August and you can't wait for it to be June, and it's summer and you want it to be Halloween, and it's Halloween and you can't wait for Thanksgiving, and it's Thanksgiving and you can't wait for Christmas. And it's just the way I think that people are. You have it more or less, and I have it really strong. But the whole thing that the sermon was about was like when you are in this bridge state where you're always thinking from one thing to the next, to try to be present with the people who you're with and know that they're there too, and say, hey, how's it going? You know, we're both here. Everybody lives in that middle ground, that gray, that kind of twilight between thing and thing. And I feel like doing these morning shows helps me to be present on the bridge and to find you there. And even if it weren't for crazy times, a lot of you are in really far away, distant places. So it's nice to meet each other here. It does make me feel connected, even though the format of talking to an empty screen is strange. So I had my little leaf out this morning, and then I found this baby. Good advice. No, you know what? You're right, Linda. You don't want to wish your life away. And I hate, it like almost gives me stomach cramps when people say things like, I'll pass the time. I always think, oh God, don't pass the time, like spend the time, enjoy the time, take the time. But it's just the way people are, right? Good morning, Christine from Chicago. I love the connection too. I'm glad. It's a weird thing, but I think even when life returns to normal, hey, Amy, I think we'll probably still do this because it's fun and we're far apart from each other. So it is a nice way to connect. So let me show you this beauty that I found on eBay. Don't be mad at me. I found it a while ago. I love it so much. It's my favorite thing. It's a leaf rug, right? I mean, leaf rugs are a dime a dozen. You saw my leaf rug. I can't even call it a leaf, and I can't even call it a rug. But this is a nice big one, and it was like a bargain on eBay. Don't forget to check eBay for things like this. But look at the colors in this thing. I mean, is this like super crazy times? This is an ultimate scrap rug. And I love that they did the background in grays, like dove grays, all kinds of slate grays, different grays. But look at these leaves, how crazy every leaf is. I think they're amazing, right? Isn't it gorgeous? So I was thinking, this morning, I think it's already up there. If you're interested in doing a rug like this, because I'm super into stencils lately, and I was advertising a class and using stencils, like Edward Frost style, a bunch of original stencils that I made and cut, like a pack of 25. And I'm starting a series of classes, like just sitting on Zoom one time and doing compositions with the stencils. So this is like a taste of that, but this is obviously one repeat stencil. So I put this shape, the shape of this exact leaf, up on ribboncandyhooking.com. So if you want it, go on ribboncandyhooking.com, put it in your cart. It's free. I think PayPal is going to charge you like 5 or 10 cents because they're such crooks. I guess they've got to do it. But it's free except for the nickel that PayPal charges you or whatever. You can download it, get out a piece of paper, or just get your backing out. Just take a chance. Be wild. Get your backing out and think about, okay, let me just position this leaf over and over and over and over. And then get all your scrappy stuff out, all your little worms and noodles, and have absolutely, see, he's outlined, or she's outlined this one. So each leaf, the thing that the pattern has in common from part to part is like the grays, the lights, the grays, the grayish browns, and the outlining around the leaf. But if you outline around the leaf like this, and then you just fill in with whatever crazy colors you find, you're going to end up with something that looks exactly like this. And I think this is just over the top for any season. I really love it. So you can download that for free on Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm also putting that template up on our Facebook page if you're a Facebook person, Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club. I'm going to post it up there as soon as we're done with this. So if you like it, download it, put it on a piece of paper, cut it out, and just do some tracey traces. I'll put this behind me so you can keep looking at it. And you can come up with something like this. So Lily just asked, how are the Nancy Thomas things coming along, the designs? Finally, great. I just heard from her daughter, Hunter, last night, who I'm working with on this. It's well worth a nickel, right? It's just such an awesome pattern. The Nancy Thomas stuff is coming forward, thank goodness, because I had like this horrible feeling. I announced the other day, if you weren't with us, that I had made a contract. I did a licensing agreement with the artist Nancy Thomas, working through her daughter who manages the business now. She was really famous, recognizable artist, and her work is so perfect for rug hooking. I licensed like all of her designs for only Ribbon Candy Hooking to use and put out. So I'm going to be offering her designs to you, hundreds of them, as patterns on backing and some of them as kits. But I came to a screeching halt because I realized that I obviously haven't hooked like 300 designs in the last 6 weeks, almost, but not quite. But I only hooked 2 of hers so far. So I need the pictures to show you what you'd be getting. Like you can't choose the pattern without seeing the picture. And it occurred to me that I might not be able, even though I have the rights to the images, I might not have the rights to whoever took the photographs of the images. And isn't this a crazy world where you have to think of things like that? I mean, like really, I could post the pictures and then get horribly sued and like lose my house, something like that. You wouldn't be surprised if you heard a story like that. So thanks for asking, Lily. I did sort that out with Hunter late last night. And so I'm going to be putting some of those on ribboncandyhooking.com immediately. In the meantime, if you go on Nancy Thomas, her website, it's I think Nancy Thomas Gallery, you can look at her images and you can just ping me with one that you want and on what backing, and I'll come back to you with the price. My prices are always pretty good. They're not crazy times. So let's move on fast because time always is a ticking. I'm going to show you my progress with these. I swear I'm going to stop. I promise I'm going to stop. For some reason, these sugar skull pumpkins, it's turned into an illness for me. I can't stop. I can't stop. I started zigzagging around the edge. So if you end up ordering a kit from me and you're turning it into a 3-dimensional piece, like I'm going to be doing in a class and on the video. Oh, good, you found one. I'm going to be zigzagging around here too. So that's one less thing for you to do. When you cut it out, that'll be safe. But I know it's hard to stop. You know, I'm suddenly getting why people love these Zentangle things, right? I learned that word the other day. And the coloring book things, because it's so relaxing doing something similar over and over. So with this one, it's the last one for now. This is the Kiss of the Spider Pumpkin. I worked in some of the colors. I did some hand dyeing that I loved before. And I started working in, I don't know if you can see it, this really sparkly thread for the cobweb cheeks. And I just wanted to ask you, do you ever use stuff like this for hooking? You know, I don't even know what brand it is. I could only find something this shiny on, I bought it on Etsy. I think it came from somewhere in Eastern Europe. But I mean, it's insanely, impossibly shiny with a real tinsel quality. I know Christine's Zentangles are great. They're great for pattern making too. Of course, when you're making a pattern for yourself, you can do anything you want. If it's hanging on your wall, as long as it's not in a commercial space, you can do anything for yourself. It's when somebody like me who you're selling patterns, you have to be so careful about copyright, but you can do anything. You can do anything at home. How freeing and liberating is that, to be able to choose anything, right? But if you like hooking with fancy fibers, these kinds of things hook really well. They tend to be a little bit expensive. Like something like this is probably going to be 10 or 12 for the small amount, but it is what it is. And you don't use a lot. And I have had the most success myself finding these high-end ones, not the really shreddy ones from the dollar store or Ocean State Job Lot. I've had the most success finding fancy fibers that are metallics. Tinsel is another key word for people using second language. For whatever reason, they're not coming up with metallic as much as they're coming up with the word tinsel in translation. So if you're looking for something super sparkly, check tinsel yarn. That'll come up. You'll get just as many hits as you will with metallic. So listen, last night I crept into bed. Jocelyn was busy with other stuff, so I actually could be conscious and look at stuff for a few minutes without being harassed and forced to give back rubs, which I also love, and running yarn in between her toes, which my mother did for me until you fall asleep. Very nice and also time consuming. I started poking through my collection of small old books. So when I'm out in the world, whether I'm at a used bookstore, which I am as often as possible, or a museum shop, or a historic house that has a few things for sale, I'm always looking for little books on rug making, rug hooking, past exhibits, because they are as scarce as hen's teeth, and you might never find them again on eBay, Abe Books, anywhere. You might never find them again. So I pick them up every time I can. Sometimes they're a little bit expensive. I don't know about this one. This one was $15, so that was a little bit expensive. But when will I ever see this book again? I know I'm backwards for live stream, but this is called Light from the Past, Early American Rugs from the collection of Ronnie Newman. Now, when I read that, I was half asleep and I went, from the collection of Randy Newman, like Short People, a song you never hear anymore. I guess it's not quite correct. But since I'm super short, I guess I can refer to it. I love that song. Anyway, this is Ronnie Newman. And this book is over the top great. So I want to share this with you because it got me going into another direction too. And I want to make the point. Oh, it's not backwards for you? Oh, that's amazing. It's backwards for me. Oh, that's great. So you can see this perfectly. You can check it out on eBay if you want. It's not all about hooked rugs, but I'm going to get there in a minute. It's an amazing book. It's an amazing resource. I'm going to tell you all about it. But do pick these books up every single time you see them. And, if it's anything to do with rug making, even if you don't want it, put it on the buy or sell page or something like that, or let me know. I'll probably buy it if I don't already have it. But I think it's really important to keep these small publications in circulation because they're a huge part of history. And, they will be gone. People will toss them in the garbage can along with the old TV guides and not know that this is useful as a resource for someone who researches rugs or needs new inspiration. So this little book, I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but it starts with a very pretentious intro. And it almost put me right off because I'm just not there anymore with all this distancing. I'm just not into that world of pretension. But Ronnie Newman, internationally known as a dealer in rare Oriental rugs, has generously extended, blah, blah, blah. Let us see his private collection. He is a multi-talented person. Now, this is when I started to really love Ronnie. He is a multi-talented person with an academic background in classical and modern languages. A skilled puppet maker and puppeteer, he produced a marionette theater with his partner, Norman Galoff. As an actor and classical singer, he's appeared on and off Broadway in musical and non-musical roles. So by now, I'm completely in love with this guy. A connoisseur of folk art with a discriminating eye, he has amassed a stunning range of works unlike anything ever seen in this region. That's such a claim, but wait till you see. I think it's understated, actually. So when I got past it, it's signed by Ronnie. I'm going to say Randy at some point, but it's Ronnie. Had some damage in this book, but I just read right through it. He writes the intro to this book on rugs. Check out this. Prowling tabby cat, he writes. I mean, when you look at something like this, right, this is an important piece of folk art. You see those black splotches on it. Now, for us, if you did that or I did that, would those black splotches be driving you nuts? Like, what happened there? They didn't come out as stripes. They didn't come out as calico. But at the end of the day, a rug this age, 1850, New England, 1850, put these beautiful blues. This would have been perfect. I think that people's eyes would see past this kind of thing because you knew that you were using scraps and you wouldn't expect it to be perfect. when you see things like that, those kinds of inconsistencies, it makes the rug more valuable and more special. But what he writes in his introduction is an important link, history-wise, to researching rugs and books about rug makers and pattern makers. So he writes, in the early literature of the subject, most American rugs, truck passing, were called hooked rugs, with little awareness that weavings and other techniques were naively included in the mix. So this is like an important line. Translation, there's so much confusion about, in history, what a hooked rug is versus what a shirred rug is versus what something woven is. There's a lot of confusion, even by people who would write books on the subject. What they were naming things was not necessarily what it was. So this has created so much confusion and talk over the years about what the first rugs were, who did the first rugs, the first hooked rugs, because the phrase hooked rug is such a moving target, because as he's saying in this intro, it was unknown and written incorrectly so many times in so many places, we really don't know. So he writes, even in William Winthrop Kent's works, he refers to a pulling through. So not necessarily like making a loop, but a pulling through. Now, I'm going to come to that now because I have all of Kent's books. So this is the first one. I had to look at them all last night. This is the Hooked Rug, super Art Deco cover. These are nice big books, and they are like lavishly illustrated. Look at this. Look at this illustration he did. Now, this book came out in it's like super early. Look at this. I got to show you this first. These little insets like this, it folds open. Isn't that great? This book came out in 1930. So he's already showing us all this variety of hooks, right? I bet yours is in there. I mean, the pen hooks, the pear hooks, the bent hooks, all of these hooks are already known by name in the 1930s. I'm going to come back to this in a minute because all of his books are great. I'm going to come back to this one. That's the only one I really got through last night. And then his second one was Hooked Rug Design. These are all old books. I'm sure you can find these on eBay. And then the third one is Rare Hooked Rugs. And they are all like just lavishly done. Beautiful black and white. And for the last one, a lot of color illustrations too. But let's come back to that in a minute. I just want to finish showing you this because I don't want to show you every page because I might get in trouble. But at the end of the day, I want you to see these rugs because you might never have this book in your hand. And I do. So I want to show you some of the things he's talking about. This here is what's called a shirred rug. And he talks a lot about shirred rugs, S-H-I-R-R-E-D, in this chapter. And if you don't know what a shirred rug is, it's not a hooked rug at all. It looks like the back of a hooked rug, though, doesn't it? Because you can see in between the little lines. I'll show you more of those. A shirred rug are sometimes called caterpillar rugs, where they would take a strip of fabric, sew right up the middle of the fabric, and then accordion it. So it was like all puckered, you know, and ruched, and then sew it down. So it would have a lot of texture. It would flap up all over the top of it. But that was the technique. It almost would look like chenille. You're sewing it down after you shear it. They became mistakenly known as sheared rugs, like shearing a sheep with an EA instead of an IRR. And that became confusing too. So he's talking about hooked rugs in the form that we know, becoming known in the 1940s, possibly earlier, but definitely in the 1940s. We're not talking about shirred rugs anymore. There's also the problem of, he tells in this chapter, people being confused by hooked rugs and not woven rugs, but yarn sewn rugs. So for example, this is a yarn sewn rug on cotton. And what this means, they're not hooking it. They're not pulling anything through. They've got the yarn in a needle and they're sewing into it. So this is like a cross between a needle point and a hooked rug, because you're not using a hook, you're using a needle. So these yarn rugs are going to create a lot of confusion for people looking at early American rugs, because it might look like a really worn down hooked rug and it's actually a yarn rug. Confusing enough. So here's where the big break came last night. I was reading, I had to like jump out of bed and go to the bathroom because I was like right on the edge of insanity and panic when I read this. Super late to be like woken up this way. So in this chapter, he says, in the later part of the 19th century, burlap was being made with like pre-drawn patterns, et cetera, et cetera. Edward Sands Frost, we know that part. And a name I've never heard, you might have, but I never have, Ebenezer Ross. So suddenly he throws in, it's like almost midnight, and he throws in this name, Ebenezer Ross of Ohio, were purveyors of some of these products, like these early commercial products. Now, of course, we've all heard of Sans Frost, but I had never heard of Ebenezer Ross. So I had to get out of bed, spring into action, and I pulled up Ebenezer Ross rug, because of course there's lots that comes up, a lot of naughty things too. Naughty things always come up. But I pulled them up, and there were tons and tons and tons of rugs, mostly animal rugs, that reminded me of our talk yesterday about Victorian cottage rugs and how manly pursuits, like the idea of making rugs with a more manly theme, like jungle animals, Rousseau type jungle animals, countered all the really ultra feminine stuff women were doing, like gardening and hooking and handcrafts, more truck action. But check out, this is one design by Ebenezer Ross. I printed it as well as I could with a crappy printer. This is his lion design. And I'm going to show you a bunch. So these are all the same. It could be that the photo's reversed, or it could be that the person reversed it. Weird thing is that some of them have a second animal in the background, like a baby, and others don't. But look at how different. These are all ones that came up at auction. And look at these colors. There's like the ghostly baby in the background. Now, Ross does do a lot of super masculine and animal stuff, just like Sans Frost. And this little book says how confusing it's been over the years for historians and antique dealers to figure out what the difference is sometimes between an Edward Sans Frost rug and an Ebenezer Ross rug. So they were so similar in their designs that it's very hard to tell. But if you Google Ebenezer Ross rug, you'll see some images come up that you've maybe never seen before. And that was super exciting. So let me just show you some more quick designs in this book before we move on. This is actually a hooked rug, a hearth rug. So of course these are called hearth rugs, but you would never put them down in front of the hearth in the winter when there was a fire. Of course, because embers would shoot out and it would be ruined. And all of your work, you used all of your scraps from your life to make the rug. You would never put it at risk like that. They only used hearth rugs when it wasn't winter, when they weren't lighting fires or cooking right there. But this is a hearth rug, shaped sort of elongated because the hearths were so big, and classic folk art, right? You've got two mismatched diamonds, little motifs. You've got two houses that are almost like bird houses, which again reminds me of that book yesterday, the Victorian cottage rugs, because there were the birdhouse chapter with birdhouse rugs. These are almost up on stakes, and this gigantically oversized flower pot in the middle. So classic. Thanks for straightening out the difference between the old. It is, I'm glad that you enjoyed it, because it is super confusing, yarn rugs versus hooked rugs versus shirred rugs. And then there are things in between, like applique rugs, that get into the mix and confuse us even more. This is another yarn rug here. And again, they look, if I can show you close up, like the back of a hooked rug, because there's a lot of little bare spots and there's a lot of channels. This is a shirred rug. And I don't know if you can tell, but you can get the feel that it looks more like chenille because of the raised elements than it does a hooked rug. So all of it sitting on top, not just pieces. Look at this rug. I wish I knew where this was. This is Hook Rug on Burlap, 1865. Doesn't have a title. It's 2 foot by 4 foot plus 10. Turtle-like Civil War ironclad monitor, which is some kind of, I'm guessing, a submarine, rises up and painted on waves like a child's diorama. Check this out. Talk about an original composition. So it's this, I'm guessing, submarine rising up, called the monitor, with the flag, with the tassel. Look at the floral motif they put in the corners. I mean, how graphic and awesome is that? And look at all the mismatchy stuff going on in the background. It's just what the person had. And how beautiful did that come out? Now, look at that submarine. They're saying that the waves are painted. And you can do this. You can paint your loops. You hardly ever see it. But it is possible. You can do it. Another shirred rug, right? Speaking of manly pursuits, another jungle. Look at the dark surrounding this, I guess, lion, maybe. And look at the size of the plants. All of this. This one actually has a braided trim on it. These are all the signature things about rug hooking that make it great. Do we really only have 5 minutes? But anyway, if you can find this book, grab it. It'll help you learn the difference between the weeping willow. This one must have been done in memory of someone else. How nice, huh? But it's so important to grab books like this because you might never see these pieces again. Museums hold these pieces, but when there isn't an exhibit, talk about things being sized weirdly, right? The vase with the two little houses on the side. Look at this one. Look at this composition. I mean, talk about a beautiful little village scene. Look at the way the puffy clouds in the blue sky kind of mimic the flowers that are going around. There's no mistake that this is not a commercial pattern. This is something somebody hand drew, and whoever hand drew it was super talented. But do pick these little books up. You never know what you're getting. Pictures of old footstools. You never know what you're getting. Now, these William Winthrop Kent books are also fantastic. As you look at these, you're going to have this feeling of like, I kept going page to page. Now, in the earlier books, the next ones are in the 1940s. So he publishes books for a while. He's showing you patterns by people I've never heard of, more research coming, but they're all black and white type patterns. And the thing is, as you go through it, I kept expecting to see the name Pearl McGowan, obviously, right? Because this is the style, the sort of scrolling style that's in these books, all of these illustrations. I kept looking at the footnote and going, oh, that's weird. That's not a Pearl McGowan. Of course, it's not a Pearl McGowan. The book came out in, what was it, 1930, right? So it's not going to be Pearl McGowan. But I know I'm doing a lot with history. I'm glad you like it. I won't always do so much with history. That's why I wanted to throw in this rug too and the stencil so you can do a craft later. But I think it's nice to talk a little bit about history because there's so much inspiration here. But of course, these rugs predate Pearl McGowan. And the reason Pearl McGowan, when she got involved with rug hooking, was such a historian herself in all of her books was because she'd already found these rugs. She was trying to name these rugs, identify the maker, identify the patterns, and then she put together a ton of patterns, a lot of them for Sturbridge Village, but a ton of patterns, the ultimate catalog at the time of patterns. And she was using some of these old designs. This one almost looks like cabbages or lettuces around the edge. I mean, it's so different. But she was sourcing these old books and periodicals to find what these patterns were, naming the patterns, so therefore standardizing them. And yeah, you're not going to see Pearl McGowan's name anywhere in this book or in the index, but it's very similar, right? But these books are so good. Again, the Kent series, he only did 3, but they are super fun to look at and to play with. And like I say, the older ones, the ones that were written about 10, 15 years later, he's got more color going. But you're going to find patterns. Welcome mats. Remember from the Victorian book yesterday, the little welcome mat with the hands, like the marriage hands. He's got whole chapters on interesting things and lots of. Here's another lettuce leaf one. You see that? Doesn't that look like cabbage or something? I mean, when you think of the Pearl McGowans and the early designs with scrolls, I've not seen one like this with like what look like giant lettuce heads around the edge, and I love it. That reminds me more of Claire Murray than it does Pearl McGowan. But anyway, that's probably all I'm going to get to today. I'm going to give you a flash of tomorrow because I got going on some crazy dyeing. I started working on these guys that I'm working on for I did a little Lizzie Borden design. I know I said I'm going to stop with Halloween, but I can't. I love Lizzie Borden because I love visiting her house in Fall River. It's super gruesome. She's the famous supposed axe murderer from like the Victorian era. But I wanted to start doing, just for fun here and there, a series of rugs like this that are about famous people, kind of Hutchinson style rugs. And I'm going to write on the design when she saw what she had done, because I don't want to write anything about giving people wax or whatever. And this is Lizzie Borden here with the axe behind her back and her dad's legs, which is kind of the position that he was found in. But yeah, I'm going to show you some tips about dyeing because this is the color set I think I'm going to use for Lizzie. I don't actually think she did it, by the way, so we'll maybe go more into that tomorrow, but that's a nice little history thing too. So I'm going to talk more about dyeing with that and some of these things I was dyeing, some more of the fall colors. I do a lot of dyeing videos, but I'm just going to show you some tricks tomorrow, just quick little things. If you want to get interested in dyeing and start practicing or refining some of your techniques, we'll do a little bit of that tomorrow. So our time is up for today. It was great to see you. It's great to connect. It's great to be on that bridge together. And I am looking forward to tomorrow. Great coffee talk. It was wonderful. Thank you. It was a fun class last night. It was really fun. We've got so many classes coming up. If you're interested in working with stencils, not just this one, either email me or look on Ribbon Candy Hooking or on the Facebook page. But remember, this leaf is now for free. You can put it in your shopping cart and check out on ribboncandyhooking.com, or look on the Facebook page, Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club. And you can get this design, put it together however you want, but work on, if you're not working on something now, work on making the ultimate fall scrap quilt out of fancy leaves like that. It would be so neat. I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great day. Be busy and happy and productive and enjoy this mild weather. It is so nice. See you tomorrow.